Hey guys, I hope you're well. Now we're going to look through some trig equations, basic trig equations, but I'm going to look at maybe choosing a different domain. So instead of having between 0 and 360, that's the full circle, what happens when I modify that domain a little bit? Sometimes I can modify it within that domain, so I can halve it, 0 to 180, or 180 to 360, or I can even look at negative angles. And I can keep on going around doing more as well than 360. So let's have a little look at this. Like the previous question, gents, most of these questions will be to do with our triangle. We're all in degrees here, by the way. So 60 degrees, 30 degrees, 1, 2, and root 3. And of course, we're looking at each of these at our unit circle. Now, I'm going to be honest, when I'm doing these questions, I often draw a little unit circle out for each question, because of course some will use all 4 quadrants, some will only use 1 or 2 of the quadrants. It depends on the question. Now, even before I look at my domain, let's try and find that link angle. Now, yes, in the last session I said you can cheat and do shift sine root 3 on 2, and it's going to tell you what the angle is going to be. Okay, but I want you to get in the habit of thinking root 3 on 2 for sine would be 60 degrees. Okay, so theta equals 60 degrees. Now, I call that the link angle theta, because remember from each of the quadrants, we have theta, we have the 180 minus theta, we have the 180 plus theta, and the 360 minus theta. Okay, now in this case, we can see that sine is positive. Where is it positive? Well, it's positive in the very first 2 quadrants. Now, that's fine, but I need to also ensure that my domain is 0 to 180 or 0 to 360. In this case, my domain is in fact 0 to 180, which means I'm not looking at those bottom 2 quadrants. Now, with this question, that actually is okay because it is positive in the first 2. But let's say, for example, if I was looking at cos or I was looking at sine, so cos or tan, then tan would only be positive in one of those 2 quadrants, and cos would only be positive in one of those 2 quadrants. Therefore, there would only be one solution. But sine, there are 2. Now, of course, it's the 60 degrees or the 180 minus 60. Therefore, we're going to say it equals 120 degrees, and that's my answer. Now, an interesting case would be had I given you minus root 3 on 2. Because if I had said minus root 3 on 2, then actually there'll be no real solutions, because negative root 3 on 2 would be in the 3rd and the 4th quadrants, and our domain is restricted in the first 2. Interesting one. Let's look at the second one, because I think the second one will go a bit more with this. I'm not going to bother drawing out my little triangle, but I am going to draw out my unit circle. Okay, my ASTC. Now, even before I start this question, I can see that my domain is 180 to 360, which means I'm actually not looking at the first 2 quadrants at all. Okay, I'm only looking at the second 2, because that's 180 degrees or pi and 360 degrees, 2 pi, which basically means because cos is negative, I'm only looking at that 3rd quadrant. So I'm restricted to only one answer here. Now, again, you can think about the negative and positives at the end of the question or at the beginning of the question. It doesn't really matter. Now, let's have a look at what my link angle is. It's 1 over 2 for cos. So if you look at that initial triangle above, I'll do it in blue this time, 1 over 2 for cos would be 60 degrees, okay, because it's 1 over 2 is adjacent over hypotenuse, which means my link angle is 60 degrees. But again, the problem is that, of course, it is a negative value, so it can't be in that first quadrant. Plus, my domain doesn't allow it to be in the first quadrant anyway. It can only be in the 3rd or 4th, but because it's negative, we've already said it can only sit in that 3rd quadrant. So we're saying 180 plus 60, which makes it 240 degrees. Now, that is my only solution. A number of students would probably put the 2nd quadrant, because that's where cos is negative, and put something like 120 degrees as well. The problem is 120 degrees does not sit inside the domain of 180 to 360. So in effect, it's actually simpler because you're only getting one answer. But a lot of students will automatically think 0 to 360 because that's what a lot of questions are. But you've got to be a little bit cautious. Now, I jump into the third one here because this becomes even more problematic, right? I'm going to rewrite and redraw my triangles out here, okay, just so it's on the screen. So again, I'm going to draw my triangles out. I've got my 1, 2, root 3. I've got my 60 degrees and my 30 degrees. Now, of course, with that, we look at our unit circle. Now, let's just get the value first. Let's go back to the other way. Let's just find what my value is. What's my angle going to be? We got root 3. It's 10. So opposite over adjacent, root 3 over 1, which means my link angle is 60 degrees. Now, I talk about my link angle once again because that's in reference to all the ones that I need. But now I've got to look at, make sure, is it positive or negative root 3? It's a positive root 3, which means it can sit in the first quadrant and the third quadrant, okay, if it's between 0 and 360. Well, to begin with, it does go to 360, but it also goes to minus 360. So it does sit in those two quadrants. Let's start with those two first. If the first one's 60, the third quadrant will be 180 plus 60, which is 240 degrees. So we know that is correct because that satisfies the 0 to 360 degrees. But the problem is I've also got 0 to negative 360. And we did a bit of work a little while ago about doing the unit circle in reverse. That means instead of going sort of anti-clockwise, we go clockwise from 0, okay, to negative 180 to negative 360. So we're going all the way around. So if we think about which two quadrants it's going to be positive in, it's still going to be positive in the first and third, which means I'm coming all the way around to minus 180, but I'm plussing on that angle there. So what we're really doing is negative 180 plus that 60 degrees, that makes negative 120. If I go into the fourth quadrant, I'm going all the way around to minus 360, and then I'm plussing on my angle there to come backwards. So we're doing minus 360 and we're going back 60 degrees, which means I'm going minus 300 degrees. Okay, and that now generates 4 possible angles that satisfies. Now, of course, what I could do, if I'm thinking they're going, oh, is that really right? That looks kind of a little bit weird. I can go through here and actually press tan theta and type in negative 120, for example, just to check that it should give me root 3, and that is positive root 3. I can go and press tan minus 300 just to make sure it comes up with that same decimal. There we go. That's going to be positive root 3. And I can double check that because positive root 3 press equals is the same value and I'm all correct. It's not easy, okay? Not easy at all. Now the next one, okay, very similar. Okay, we've got my triangle there. I'm going to do a little unit circle for when we get to the positive negatives. Let's just get my angle first. Okay, sine theta is 1 over 2. So that would be 30 degrees for opposite over hypotenuse. Again, if you press shift sine 1/2, it will also come up with that 30 degrees. That's my link angle. Now, hopefully you're saying, but sir, you can't be 30 because it's a negative 1 on 2. So of course it can't be 30, but it is my link angle. So where on my circle, my unit circle, is a half or sine, so I say sine negative? Well, sine's negative in the bottom two quadrants between 0 to 360, which basically means my angle would be 180 plus 30, which is 210 degrees, and 360 minus 30, which is 330 degrees. That's if it was between 0 and 360. But it wants me to go around again because we're going all the way to 720, okay? Which means once I've gone around that first time, we're now, notice a little highlighter, going to go around a second time. It's still going to be negative in those bottom two quadrants, but it just means basically, if I think about my first angle, if I go around a second time, it's basically like adding in another 360 degrees to that number, which basically means if I add 360 to 210, we're going to get 570 degrees. If I add on 360 to the 330, we're going to get 690 degrees. Some people will think about it being going around from 360 plus 180 plus the 30, and then going around two lots of 360, which is 720, and then minusing the 30. There's other ways that you can kind of think about that. And once again, I can check my answers. Again, not easy. I understand this. Okay. We can check our answers by saying sine, and I'm going to type in 690, and it should say negative a half. And look at that, it does. Not easy. I know it's not easy when you start doing things like twice around, but it's twice around because the domain is changing. Okay. Now, often, I'm going to be honest, we often, like the last lesson, we sit between 0 and 360 almost all the time, but not all the time. So you got to be a little bit careful about what angles to include. Have a wonderful day, gents. I'll see you on Monday.